Right. Buckle up, because we've just witnessed one of the most extraordinary U-turns in British political history, and it reveals exactly how terrified Keir Starmer is of Angela Rayner. Just months after Rayner was forced to resign in disgrace over a £40,000 stamp duty scandal, after she admitted breaching the ministerial code, after she left the cabinet amid intense scrutiny over her tax affairs, Starmer has now pledged to bring her back. Not just back into Parliament, she never left that, but back into the cabinet, back into a position of real power. And he's doing it because he's realised something absolutely crucial. Angela Rayner has more support within the Labour Party than he does. She's more popular with members, more connected to the unions, more authentically working class than Starmer could ever be. And if he doesn't bring her back, if he leaves her on the back benches where she's already been reportedly plotting leadership deals, she will destroy him. So Starmer has done the unbelievable. He's welcomed back someone who breached the ministerial code, who cost taxpayers £40,000, who resigned in disgrace, and he's trying to spin it as magnanimity rather than what it actually is, which is pure political survival. So what exactly has Starmer said? Why is he so desperate to bring Rayner back? And what does this tell us about his grip on power? Let's dive into this stunning political reversal. Quick favour before we get into this extraordinary story. If you're watching this thinking Starmer is absolutely desperate, then hit that subscribe button right now. Over 92% of you haven't done it yet. It's completely free, takes 2 seconds, and helps us massively. Cheers if you did. Right, let's talk about Starmer's unbelievable decision. So let's start with what Starmer actually said, because the language he uses is incredibly revealing. In an interview with The Observer, the Prime Minister said he missed Angela Rayner and suggested that misogyny had played a part in the level of criticism she and Chancellor Rachel Reeves have received in recent months. Misogyny. That's his explanation for why Rayner faced scrutiny over underpaying £40,000 in stamp duty. Not that she made a serious error that breached the ministerial code. Not that she failed to seek proper tax advice on a complex property transaction, but misogyny. That's an absolutely extraordinary claim, and it's clearly designed to deflect from the substance of why Rayner had to resign. Starmer described Rayner as the best social mobility story this country has ever seen. That's quite a statement. Better than anyone who's risen from poverty to become Prime Minister. Better than all the working class people who've achieved extraordinary success in business, science, the arts. It's hyperbolic praise designed to build her back up, to remind everyone of her compelling personal story, because Rayner's background is genuinely impressive. Born Angela Bowen in 1980 in Stockport, Greater Manchester, she grew up on a council estate in challenging circumstances. She left school at 16 without qualifications to care for her mother, who had autoimmune issues. She later trained as a care worker and became a prominent trade unionist with Unison before entering politics. That's a genuinely inspiring story of someone overcoming difficult circumstances to reach the highest levels of government. When asked directly if he missed his former deputy, Starmer said, "Yes, of course I do. I was really sad that we lost her. As I said to her at the time, she's going to be a major voice in the Labour movement." Lost her. That's interesting phrasing. She wasn't lost in some tragic accident. She resigned because she breached the ministerial code. But Starmer is framing it as if she was taken from him by circumstances beyond anyone's control. And then, crucially, when pressed about whether she'll be back in the cabinet, Starmer said, yes, she's hugely talented. Not maybe, not we'll see, but yes, a definitive commitment that Angela Rayner will return to the cabinet despite having resigned in disgrace just months ago. Now let's talk about why Rayner had to resign in the first place, because this is important context that Starmer is trying to gloss over. The controversy emerged in August 2025, when reports revealed she had underpaid stamp duty land tax by approximately £40,000 on an £800,000 seafront flat she purchased in Hove, East Sussex. £40,000 is not a minor error. That's a substantial sum of money that should have gone to HMRC but didn't because of either negligence or deliberate avoidance. The situation was complicated. Rayner had transferred her remaining interest in the family home in Ashton-under-Lyne to a trust for her disabled son in January 2025. She'd done a partial transfer in 2023 after her divorce, and then completed the transfer before buying the Hove property. When she bought the seafront flat, she was advised by lawyers that she owned no other property, and thus qualified for the standard stamp duty rate of £30,000, rather than the higher rate for additional dwellings of £70,000. The difference, £40,000. But here's the problem. The advice she received was wrong. Further legal review highlighted complex deeming provisions under tax law that treated the trust arrangement as retaining her interest in the family home. So technically, for tax purposes, she still owned the property even though it was in a trust for her son. That meant she should have paid the higher rate. The issue drew intense media scrutiny, with questions raised about the quality of her tax advice. She'd used a family conveyancing firm which clarified it did not provide specialized trust or tax guidance. So she went to lawyers who weren't qualified to advise on the specific complexity of her situation, and she ended up underpaying £40,000 in tax. On September 3, 2025, Rayner self-referred the matter to Sir Laurie Magnus, the Prime Minister's independent ethics advisor. That was the right thing to do, showing she was taking it seriously, but the conclusion was damning. On September 5th, Magnus concluded that she had breached the ministerial code by failing to seek adequate specialist advice on her tax obligations. Breached the ministerial code? That's the standard that's supposed to trigger automatic resignation. Ministers are expected to maintain the highest standards of conduct, and failing to properly handle your own tax affairs, especially when you're in charge of housing policy, is a serious breach. In her resignation letter, Rayner expressed deep regret, stating she took full responsibility for the mistake and had never intended to avoid the correct payment. And to his credit at the time, Starmer responded with a handwritten note expressing sadness at her departure and praising her as a trusted colleague and trailblazer for working-class backgrounds. The resignation triggered a cabinet reshuffle and a Labour deputy leadership contest. That contest is presumably still ongoing or recently concluded, and it marked a significant blow to Starmer's government amid ongoing economic challenges. Rayner said she would continue advocating for her constituents and Labour's core values from the backbenches. But here's what's really significant. Earlier this week, a source close to Rayner said she will not be played like a pawn after reports of a deal for her and Health Secretary Wes Streeting to run for the Labour leadership. The source said there is no vacancy and there is no pact, after the Daily Telegraph reported that allies of Streeting were pressing Rayner to sign up to a joint ticket for the top job. A joint ticket for the top job. Think about what that means. Senior Labour figures are already discussing who replaces Starmer, and Rayner is at the centre of those discussions. That's why Starmer is bringing her back. He's realised that leaving Rayner on the back benches, where she's free to plot, where she's building alliances, where she's being courted by other leadership contenders, is far more dangerous than bringing her back into cabinet where he can keep her close and control her. It's the classic political strategy. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer. Rayner isn't necessarily Starmer's enemy, but she's definitely a threat to his leadership. And the reports of leadership pacts between her and Streeting must have absolutely terrified Starmer. Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch made it clear what she thinks should happen. She argued during Prime Minister's questions that any return for Rayner should be conditional on her paying back the £40,000 of property taxes she avoided. That's a reasonable position. If you underpaid tax through your own negligence in seeking proper advice, you should pay it back before being rewarded with a cabinet position. But there's no indication that Starmer is making that a condition of her return. Starmer insisted in the interview that he had no intention of stepping aside before the next election. He gave this defiant speech about how everyone said he couldn't change the Labour Party. Then they said he couldn't win an election, and now they're saying he can't change the country. And he claims that every time he's defied them. But here's the problem. He hasn't changed the country. 17 months into a 5-year term, and Britain is worse off than when Labour took power. The economy is struggling, polls show Labour collapsing, his own MPs are plotting against him, and he's now having to bring back a cabinet minister who resigned in disgrace just to shore up his position. That's not defying expectations. That's desperately clinging to power. Right, that's the story of how Keir Starmer realised Angela Rayner would destroy him from the backbenches and made the unbelievable decision to bring her back into cabinet, despite her ministerial code breach. Thanks so much for watching this. Look at Starmer's desperate political manoeuvring. Make sure you're subscribed because this Labour leadership drama is far from over. Until next time, stay informed, and we'll see you in the next one.